Hello, everyone, and welcome in to another episode of the RTI Recruiting Podcast. I am Nathaniel Rutherford, the managing editor of RockyTopInsider.com, and I'm joined by a special guest, our friends at VR2, part of the Sports Illustrated family, Brandon Martin. No Matt Ray this episode. Hopefully we can get him on here soon because it'd be nice to have kind of a whip around with you guys as our guests here on the show to talk about just all kinds of stuff for recruiting in Tennessee. But Brandon, I do thank you for coming on here and joining me as a guest. We have another commitment to talk about. We have some discussion to talk about with Tennessee and another five-star target. And we have an interesting situation that happens, I think it was Friday night, that you and I are going to talk about and kind of discuss what exactly may or may not have happened on social media with a kid that was may or may not have committed to Tennessee. So we'll discuss about that. But first, let's get to the for sure definite good news for Tennessee that happened on Monday, and that was Miles Campbell, who committed to Tennessee, one of Tennessee's top tight end targets in the 2021 class. He's a fast riser, a guy who's gotten a ton of interest since the calendar flipped over to 2020. I think he's picked up like close to, I think, over 24 offers in I think like a 5 or 6 month span ever since his junior season ended. I believe 247 Sports had interviewed, I can't remember who they talked with. It might have been Steve Wiltfong. I don't remember who it was now, but whoever they were talking to said that they believe he is a sneaky good, kind of a sleeper guy who's going to move up the recruiting rankings. I think he will too. Brandon, looking at his film, I think he is a perfect fit for Jim Chaney's offense. He's a guy who's athletic. He can move really quickly. He's about 6'3". He looked about 220 or so in his highlight film. He's now listed around 230, 235. I think it's a better weight. I think I'd like to see him get up to closer to 240. I think he can still play at that weight and play really athletically. But he's a guy that, watching his film, he makes a lot of good grabs over the middle. I like him in the red zone. I like what he does on third down and things like that. I think he would be a great target for whoever Tennessee's quarterback is going to be in the future. But he's also a pretty good blocker. I mean, there's multiple times on his film where it shows him blocking on the inside, on the line like an actual tight end, blocking downfield as a wide receiver in passing plays. I just think he's a really gifted athlete who's very versatile for his team. South Paulding, they play him at Wildcat quarterback, they play him at tight end, they play him at receiver, they play him on defense. He's a kind of a do-it-all guy who I think is very versatile. And I just think that while a little raw in some areas, he actually can already run several different routes. And like I said, he's very dangerous over the middle. I really like this pickup. I think he could develop into I don't want to say like Michael Rivera because that's a pretty high comparison for a tight end at Tennessee. But I look at what Jim Chaney has done with tight ends like him in the past. I think he is just an excellent fit for what Chaney likes to do with tight ends.
Well, and he is, and you brought up one of the most important things. It was where I started when I was doing my analysis of him, and that is, if you're going to play tight end for Jeremy Pruitt, you have to be able to block. Mm-hmm. Even with the evolution we've seen of the position, with a lot of tight ends being more like big wide receivers, playing in the slot, playing away from the formation, even when you play on the line, you're flexed back in that H-back role so you can get a clean release. Pruitt wants you to be able to be an asset in the running game. You have to be able to block. That was one of the biggest things that Dominic Wood-Anderson did so well. And so you've got to be able to block to contribute in this scheme. That means Tennessee wants guys that are bigger than tight ends that a lot of other programs are interested in, because they do want you to play significant snaps in that inline blocking situation. And Campbell can do that. And I think I'm like you, I think he's going to be able to get up to about 240, maybe even 245 without losing a lot of athleticism. And he shows that blocking. He plays with pretty good pad level. He's got a little bit of a nasty streak when he comes out to get you on a block. He gets to the second and third level really well. He's a guy that if you throw a screen to his side, he can go lead that. If you run a sweep and the running back breaks one, he's the guy who's going to be the convoy going downfield to spring somebody. He's got that ability. They're going to have to teach him a little bit in pass pro, but ideally, if the offensive line improves, they're not going to have to keep him in as much as we saw with Dominic Wood-Anderson and Tennessee's other tight ends in this past year, where they've kind of had to stay in and help protect the last two seasons. They'd like to get him out. The reason they want to get him out is you can move him all over the field, and he is extraordinarily athletic. He's got a good frame. He moves and runs routes like a wide receiver. He's got wide receiver ball skills. This is a guy who over the middle of the field is going to be a problem, especially if you put him on the same side as a Josh Palmer or a D'Angelo Gibbs or a Jalen Hyatt. these guys who have got the speed to take the top off the defense. You put him on the same side of the formation with those guys, and you're immediately dictating to the defense, okay, you can either roll both safeties to this side, or you can show me who's getting man. Because you're either going to put a safety on Campbell, and he's going to be able to check out at 5 to 7 yards and just have an automatic easy catch. You're going to put the safety over the top of these two receivers, and Campbell's going to have the middle of the field to work on a linebacker, or you're going to take Campbell and risk one of these guys running by your corner for a touchdown. And I think it's going to make a weapon like him downfield, and especially over the middle, as the kind of tight end that he is, with the athleticism he's got, with the hands that he's got, he allows you to dictate how the defense can cover you. And the way the defense lines up, you're going to see what kind of coverage that is. It's going to be really, really helpful to Tennessee's quarterbacks, not just in the terms of having another weapon, but in terms of being able to identify coverages early. I think this is a good pickup. I don't remember if it was, I'm like you, I don't remember if it was Wilt Fong or Rusty Manziel compared him to Evan Ingram that had been at Ole Miss and is now with the New York Giants. That was his comparison to Campbell for his type of athleticism, what he thought he brought to the table. This kid's a really good athlete.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't take more than watching, the first minute and a half of his film to realize how good of an athlete he is. He moves. What surprised me the most about him was, his blocking ability, because I expected when I turned on his film to see him looking at his size and stuff. I thought, okay, he's going to be a guy we're going to see, out wide a lot, a receiver, and I knew from his stats that he was going to be a guy you'd see in the backfield a little bit sometimes, but I didn't expect to see just the aggressiveness of the blocking that he did in the run game, and then downfield in the passing game as a receiver. But his movement, the way he's able to cut and go is pretty impressive for a tight end. You don't see that a whole lot for most tight ends. For tight ends nowadays, you either have those pure pass catching tight ends who are almost like a receiver, and you have those blocking guys kind of like Austin Pope, who is more of a blocking guy who can move and can catch, but isn't going to really burn you in the passing game. It's a nice rare blend when you have guys who can do kind of both, and I think Campbell's a guy who can do both. You're right that he's got to develop a little bit better in pass protection, and like I said, I want to see him bulk up a little bit more too. But I love the ceiling of this kid, and I just think he's going to be a perfect fit for what Jim Chaney wants to do, in the next few years. However long Jim Chaney is going to be at Tennessee, I think he's going to fit in well with this offense. But Brandon, we haven't, this is actually the first commit Tennessee's gotten over a week. It kind of feels weird. I think Vol fans it feels like a drought. Tennessee had like an 8-day span without getting a commit. It felt weird not talking about any other commits here for a week plus or so. But we were asked on Twitter, and I wanted to discuss it because I think it's worth having a discussion about. We've talked about this recruit just a little bit on the podcast before, but I think it's been a little bit, and we haven't really had an in-depth discussion. So I wanted us to both to kind of talk about it here. I wish I could remember who asked us so I could plug them here on the podcast. But someone on Twitter asked us, I think last week, what Tennessee's chances are. How realistic are Tennessee's chances with 5-star outside linebacker Smael Mondon from Paulding County in Dallas, Georgia. And if you'd asked me that, a couple weeks ago, definitely a month ago, I would have said Tennessee, they don't stand much of a chance. I think actually I think you and I were talking either off the podcast, or I think when we had Matt on once, you mentioned, Marius Mims, you thought that Tennessee was kind of wasting their time there, and when we all said that, now Tennessee kind of has a legit shot there. Smael Mondon's a guy who I kind of thought Tennessee was also kind of wasting their time on a little bit, a month ago or so. But now, I know if you look at his 247 profile, you'll see, Rusty Manziel, you'll see Steve Wiltfong, you'll see I think 9 crystal ball predictions, all in favor of Georgia, and a lot of them came on here in the last, I think the beginning of May, like May 8th through the 11th is when most of them came in. But I genuinely think Tennessee actually has a shot with Mondon. I don't, he's going to be announcing sometime in June. He tweeted out the graphic that I think he mentioned just June 2020. He didn't say what date or anything like that, but I actually think Tennessee has an okay shot and is maybe in a better position than what a lot of people would assume for Smael Mondon this one. I'm not ready to say he's going to come to Tennessee. I'm not ready to pull that trigger necessarily, but I think Tennessee's in a better spot.
Well, we can sit here. We can talk about what we know on a breakdown. We can talk about what we've heard from sources, what kind of the rumblings and the buzz are. We can talk about all that. All I know is Kamar Wilcoxon has been blowing Smael Mondon up, and that's enough for me. Until Kamar's wrong, I'm with him because he's not missed yet. In all seriousness, you have heard a lot of these Tennessee linebackers talking about, even after Aaron Willis came in, talking about wait till we get that last piece. Wait till we get that last piece. And it sort of seems like everybody's talking to Mondon and talking about Mondon. Now, when we heard them doing that before, it was to guys that had already told the program they were coming. It was guys that they had told the coaches ahead of time. They were in the boat. They were waiting to announce the decision. And it's a very similar situation. Now, I'm not saying it's done. I don't know that. I know there were rumors about that. I don't know that. But I do think it's, after that stretch that Tennessee had, that 11-day stretch, this is what it looked like when Tennessee was going to land a big commit. This is what it looked like. You had certain guys in the class and certain guys on the team blowing the player in question up on the internet. They never really seemed to shoot it down. They were jumping back and forth, interacting with the Tennessee fan base, interacting with the Tennessee players. And that's kind of what Mondon has done. And now Tennessee has been hard there. They have really worked hard on him. And if you're Tennessee, you have the ability to sell a kid like Mondon on, and this is not being a homer, but come be a part of the best linebacking class in the country this year. Because if you're talking about Aaron Willis, Dylan Brooks, Terrence Lewis, and Smael Mondon, nobody's topping that.
Nope. That
is the best class in the country, period, the end, at linebackers. And, oh, by the way, Junior Colson's still in play. So, I think Tennessee's got a shot here. I think they have definitely been involved with Mondon. I would have to think that Tennessee is pitching Mondon the role they can play him in. He's very much like Terrence Lewis. You can play him all over the defense, but I think Mondon's probably even more versatile. Mondon's an extraordinarily smooth athlete, very, very smooth athlete, plays all over the defense in high school, just absolutely all over the field, and is a fantastic offensive weapon. I think he's going to be a linebacker, but a guy like Jeremy Pruitt, Derek Ansley, with what they have done with athletes like this in the past, this kid's a chess piece, and they're going to have a lot of fun with him. I think they've got a shot. I really do. I know a lot of the Georgia folks feel like he's just a lock to Georgia, but Georgia's not done a great job the last few years of closing on a lot of those in-state guys they felt like were locked up.
Yeah, your point there about Georgia not being able necessarily to close with kind of the top talent in their own state over the last couple cycles is actually worth pointing out. You look at the 2020 class, and yes, they got Keely Ringo, who is one of the top guys in their state, and not, excuse me, he wasn't, stays in Arizona. I got the wrong thing pulled up here. But yes, I mean, they still had obviously an extremely good class last year, and they did pull in Roderick Jones, who's in the state of Georgia, and Tate Ratledge in the state of Georgia as well. But you look at some of the other top guys, they didn't get Eric Gilbert, who is the number 1 player in the state. They didn't get Miles Murphy, the number 2 player in the state. They didn't get Will Anderson, who is another 5-star who Alabama got. Auburn got a 4-star in Tank Bigsby. LSU also got Philip Webb. Brian Branch, one of the top kids in the state, went to Alabama. Georgia only got 2 of the top 10 kids from their state. Actually, 2 of the top 15 kids in the state last cycle. You can go back to the 2019 class as well, and I think your point there, Brandon, is actually pretty accurate. You look at kind of early on at what Kirby Smart was able to do with this in-state group of kids. They were able to kind of recruit better in the state of Georgia. That hasn't been necessarily the case in the last 2 cycles. 2019, Jaden Hazelwood ended up going to Oklahoma. Yes, they got Trevon Walker, but Andrew Booth, Owen Papo, Wanye Morris, those are all kids who went to other schools. Harry Miller and Chris Hinton all went to other schools as well. So yes, they're still getting, there's plenty of recruits to go around in Georgia. I mean, that class, you look at it, they still got Dominic Blaylock, and they got Trezor Marshall. So they still got a lot of, good players from their own state, but they've not done a great job in the last couple of cycles of really closing out with the top talent. They haven't got the number one player in their own state. Not even in 2018, Trevor Lawrence was the number one player in the state. That's such a weird. Actually, no, it's not. That's again. Yeah, it is. You had Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields as the number one, number two players in the country, both in Georgia. Georgia got one of them, but then they kind of screwed it up with Justin Fields, and so technically didn't end up getting either one of them. So they haven't got the number one player in their own state in a while, actually. So that's a very good point. And like you said, I don't want to. I'm not saying that Tennessee's got him. I'm not saying that he's. There's rumors that he filmed a video and committed to Tennessee last weekend. Not this previous week, not this most recent weekend, but the weekend before last, like the 10th or so, when Tennessee got Caden Salter and Aaron Willis and whatnot. And you saw him on Monday, on the 11th. The day after that stuff was kind of all circulating around. Tweet out the little video that said 6, and then an empty date, and then 20. Didn't say it's when he's committing, but I think that's kind of him saying it's when he's going to commit. Watch, he'll probably release like a top 5 or something like that, and that'll be what. And people are disappointed in it, but it seems like he's hinting that he's going to commit sometime in June. I don't know, Brandon. I just know one thing, and you and I were talking about this before we record. If Tennessee gets Mondon, and if they also somehow get Mims, the absolute meltdown from Georgia fans will be incredible, and we can both sit here and guarantee you, everybody listening right now, that Matt Ray, our buddy at VR2, your boss, Brandon, he would be the happiest person on the planet if Tennessee pulled that off.
Yeah, it would be a good day at the Ray House if that happened. It wouldn't just be a good day in terms of seeing Tennessee do really, really well, but it would be a good day in the Ray House if that was the way that things went. And Georgia's absolutely in play for both of those guys. I think they're definitely on the table. I think they're considered the favorites, and it's important to note you don't always have to be the best at keeping players from your home state home to have a good recruiting class.
Right.
I think more importantly, and I think you've seen this with Jeremy Pruitt, it has been about keeping the top guys from your state that fit your system at home. And Pruitt has consistently recruited to type. He has a system. He has a type of player that he wants, and you have watched him go get that guy. If they happen to be from Tennessee and they're a good athlete, then he will prioritize them. I think, we talked about Miles Campbell today, a guy that Tennessee has recruited very hard in the state of Tennessee that I don't think they're going to get is Hudson Wolf. Hudson Wolf fits exactly what Tennessee wants in a tight end. And I just don't think Hudson has a lot of interest in being in Knoxville. But Jeremy Pruitt has really worked hard there. There have been other guys that are really quality players, but they don't quite fit what Pruitt has wanted, and he's not pursued them as hard. So there's something to be said for, yes, you want to keep the best players in your state at home, but you're not going to keep everybody, and everybody isn't going to fit what you need. Now, to the point about talking about Georgia, Eric Gilbert fit everybody's offense in America. Everybody. I don't care what you run. He fits. You could find a place for him. And Georgia does have that. Georgia has got that advantage over Tennessee is in the state of Georgia, you've got more elite top-end talent than you do in the state of Tennessee in high school football right now. And they've struggled to keep it home. And I'm very surprised they've struggled to keep it home as well as they have recruited nationally. Laneith Whitehead is a really good example that Tennessee went into Athens and got. Like, he isn't just from Georgia. He is from Athens, Georgia. He plays at Athens Academy. He is less than a 10-minute drive from Sanford Stadium. And Tennessee went down there and got him. About a top 100 player in the country that is as in your own backyard as you can get. So Georgia has not always knocked it out of the park closing on these in-state guys. And even though they, I think, want Mims and Mondon badly, Tennessee's done a better job, I think, getting their attention. I think Tennessee has done a better job at peer recruiting them, making them feel like a priority, making it evident that they're a priority, trying to get them to buy into being a part of building something. And I don't think that's an accident. I don't think that's just a coincidence that you're seeing these guys kind of take notice and interacting with Tennessee fans, interacting with Tennessee players and commits in this class, that we've seen what that's meant. So I do think Tennessee has got a real shot here, especially for Mondon. I think they have a real shot for Mondon.
I will be very interested to see what happens with Mondon in June. Like I said, whether that's going to be him committing, whether that's going to be him releasing the top 10, top 5, whatever it's going to be. It's going to catch a lot of attention, especially if he commits. And if it's not Georgia, even if it's not Tennessee, if he doesn't commit to Georgia, that's going to be a big disappointment for Bulldog fans. Even if it's not Tennessee, if it's somewhere else. He talked with you all before at VR2 talking about how all this COVID stuff kind of has changed his recruitment, kind of made him, he wants to go visit more places, but now it looks like, since they've pushed back they're kind of, still suspended, still delayed the recruiting calendar a little bit longer now. We're seeing more kids and stuff come out and commit this past weekend. Today, as we're recording this on Monday, Tennessee wasn't the only SEC school to have another commit today. You had Auburn, I think, got 4 over the weekend. You had Texas A&M pick up 1 today as well before we start recording this. So we're seeing more and more kids, I think, realizing, hey, maybe I'm not going to be able to visit like I wanted to. I don't know what the season's going to hold, as far as when it's going to start, what it's going to happen there. So we're seeing more and more kids go ahead and start deciding, I've been going on virtual tours. I've been talking to these coaches, via Skype, via Zoom, via, FaceTiming, whatever. And a lot of them are deciding, hey, let's go ahead and make this decision now, because a lot of classes, you look at Tennessee especially, a lot of classes are starting to fill up pretty quickly here already. And you're seeing plenty of classes already have, 12, 13, 14, 15 commits, and that's over half of their class already in the boat right now. And obviously Tennessee, we talked about this I think on the last podcast, the number they have right now of the 22 guys committed, that's going to change, because we assume a few of these guys are not going to stay around in this class, whether it's because they're told to move on or whether because they decide to move on themselves. That could be guys decommitting because they want to go elsewhere. It could be guys kind of getting recruited over. The 22 isn't necessarily the set number for Tennessee right now. But speaking of that, Brandon, talking about the numbers and talking about more commitments and stuff, there was an interesting thing that happened, like I said, I think it was on Friday night, where Jamon Gordon, a junior college defensive tackle, not rated right now, but I would assume he would be around a 4-star or so once he gets rated, because you look at his offer list and it's pretty impressive. Offers from Oklahoma, from Auburn's got interest in him, South Carolina, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, now Tennessee as well. But there was an incident, it seemed like, where he tweeted out a commitment to Tennessee, but then 10 minutes later or so mentioned, hey, no, I'm not committed. He deleted the initial tweet where he tweeted out the edit or whatever it was from being committed. Then he twice came out and said not committed. On this is May 15th, he said not committed and with 100 emoji, and then quoted the tweet he ended up deleting and said not committed. So what do we make of this, Brandon? I've seen a lot of different people kind of discuss about it, give opinions on it. Did Tennessee turn down his commitment? Did he accidentally tweet this out? What is your take on this whole situation?
I think it's got to be one of those two. Either he tried to commit and the coaches decided not to take it, or he didn't mean to send that out yet. And I think it could be either one. If Tennessee turned down Jamon Gordon's commitment, I'm astounded, because he's an outstanding defensive line prospect, and Tennessee needs defensive linemen in this class. Like, they need a lot of them. Right now, you're talking about Daryl Middleton is going to graduate. Mm-hmm. Emmett Gooden's going to graduate. Aubrey Solomon's going to graduate. Savion Williams is scheduled to be a senior. Matthew Butler is a senior. And Jaquan Blakely is a senior. That's 5 guys right there off your defensive line that are leaving. And most of them are at least in the rotation. So what do? If you're Tennessee, you've got to replace these guys. And right now, the only defensive lineman off the top of my head in the class is Katron Evans. I can't. I don't. Well,
Isaac
there's
Washington.
Isaac Washington,
Yeah.
and then I don't know what Daryl Jackson's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
At his current weight, I don't think he's going to be an end for Tennessee. I think he would have to be an outside linebacker. And I think Washington could be an end. They're still going to have to put some weight on him, but I think he'll end up a defensive end for Tennessee in this 3-4 when they get a little weight on him. But Evans and Washington are it. So that's it. If you're just wanting to replenish numbers, you're just wanting to reload on the guys you're losing, you need to get 3 more guys on the boat. Now, if you're Tennessee, obviously you've got interest in Peyton Page. You have interest in Ingram Dawkins out of South Carolina. Javari Ritzie is a guy that Tennessee has recruited hard and is definitely interested in. But I think we all kind of feel like Ritzie is a pretty heavy North Carolina lean right now. Mm-hmm. And then you start looking at some potential swing guys. So somebody like William Griffin at Pearl-Cohn here in Nashville. Griffin could play nose tackle. He could play defensive end in that 3-4 scheme. He could be a right tackle on offense. Dietrich Pennington in Memphis at Evangelical out there. He could be a guard. He could be a tackle. He could be a 3-4 end. Could maybe even potentially play that nose spot. So you've got a couple of swing guys there that could help you multiple places. But you need at least 3 more guys. At least 3 more guys. And man, Jamon Gordon's good. His film is really, really, really good. When you put on his East Mississippi film from last year, now it was his first year at community college, but East Mississippi is the same program that produced Darrell Middleton. You're talking about every single snap on this highlight, the man across from him is 3 yards in the backfield right at the snap of the ball, and it's consistent, which tells me this is not it looks exactly the same every time he does it. So that tells me he's coming out with good technique. This is repeatable. He plays with fantastic pad level. We talk about defensive linemen a lot, defensive and offensive linemen playing too high. Gordon plays low, and he's firing out consistently, good pad level, getting a hold of a man, driving him back 3 yards into the backfield, and then using his quickness to go make a play on the ball. But he blows a ton of plays up as a quick penetrator. He's got a great offer list. If he wanted to commit to Tennessee and the staff turned down his commitment, who in the world do they think they have in the boat? Because I don't think Gordon affects Peyton Page. Gordon is very likely a 3-4 end for Tennessee. If they go to a sub package and go into a 4-man defensive line, Gordon probably bumps in to play that under tackle next to whoever your nose is. Peyton Page, if he comes to Tennessee, is a nose tackle. He's a nose tackle. He's maybe a massive guard, but he's not playing end. So if you take Gordon, it shouldn't hurt your chances with Page. It shouldn't impact that there. Again, with Ingram Dawkins, that's a kid that looks like he's going to be a defensive end. He does look like he's kind of in the same role that Gordon would be in. So do you really feel strongly there? But you need multiple guys. You would really like to take both of those guys. So if they turned down his commitment, who in the world do they have? Is my question. Because Gordon's a really good player. I was very excited looking at his film, and his offer list is outstanding. I think Tennessee's going to maybe get back involved there.
The only name that came to my mind, you talk about big names, you mentioned all the ones there. The only other big name that came to my mind was, and I don't think this is the case because I don't think he's going to come to Tennessee, but 5-star Mason Smith out of Louisiana, because I remember seeing, I think a week ago, Ryan Callahan of 247 Sports did an article talking about Tennessee is back in the picture with Smith because Tennessee's, their recruiting momentum's caught his attention, and Jimmy Brumbaugh's done a good job of building relationships in this class with the defensive linemen and stuff. I definitely don't think Tennessee's got his commitment. You look at his crystal ball predictions, just like with Smael Mondon, he has 9 of them, all in favor of the same team, and that is LSU, the in-state Tigers. He plays down in Houma, Louisiana, I think is what it is, and Terrebonne. I probably butchered both those names, but he's the only one that came to my mind, Brandon, because he's a guy who you would definitely hold a spot for no matter what, and maybe turn down another high-rated kid to keep. But like you said, I don't think that's who it is. I don't think Tennessee's got him by any chance. I don't know how good they'd feel about their chances with him. The only ones I can think of would be Ingers, Dawkins, and Page. And I like you said, you take as many defensive linemen in this class as you can, I think, personally. But that also goes back to the conversation we had last podcast of where does Tennessee's numbers go in this class? Because, I mean, they're in on a lot of guys. They already have 22 committed. We assume, a handful of those guys won't be in this class that are currently in the class right now.
But not many.
But right, yeah. But it's not like you're going to lose 7, 8, or 9 of those guys. I don't think you're going to probably lose 3, 4, maybe 5 at the most, in my opinion, of guys who will be told to move on or guys who look elsewhere themselves. It's not going to be enough to move on to you can take probably all 3 of those linemen and then take a couple more offensive linemen, take a couple more linebackers. You've got at some point here, and you got probably a tight end you're going to take, whether it's Trinity Bell or, you look at what else Tennessee's looking at the tight end position. I mean, the way the number is going to work out in this class is going to be interesting. And it also makes me wonder what schools are going to be able to do with blue shirting and stuff with this specific class. We talked about this, I think, last podcast too, because with all of the pushing back the recruiting calendar, with all the visits that are not being done right now, that were not being done in the spring, that are not going to be done this summer, does the NCAA, do they change the 25 scholarship limit for this class specifically? Does that kind of affect things moving forward for the rest of the, moving on in the 2022, 23, and beyond classes? I just wonder if this class specifically of recruits is going to be different for everyone, where everyone's going to be allowed to maybe have it bigger, everyone's going to be allowed to kind of play with the numbers a little bit because of the fact that kids haven't been able to go visit like they normally would and aren't going to be able to visit like they normally would. That makes me wonder, is Tennessee kind of hedging their bets here and saying, hey, we're just going to take as many kids as we can and we'll kind of deal with it later on?
I mean, right now, Tennessee's probably got, I think there are between 3 to 4 guys in this class that Tennessee, at the rate they're recruiting right now, are probably going to wind up parting ways with through Tennessee's decision. And you could always lose guys that you have committed that you would really like to keep, but Tennessee's done a really good job. The guys they have landed are guys that, for the most part, have got long interest and ties and lots of visits to the program. These are guys, for the most part, people aren't stunned to see come to Tennessee. So I feel like most of the guys they want to keep, they've got a really good shot at keeping as long as they do what they're supposed to on the field this fall. I think there's probably about 4 guys they may be willing to move on from. And with the spots they have left, you have absolutely got to take one other tight end. Tennessee has to get another tight end in this class, at least one more, or another wide receiver to move one of the receivers they've got to tight end. Mm-hmm. But you got to have somebody else to play tight end besides Miles Campbell. You've got to have 2. Tennessee really would like to land at least one more offensive tackle, if not 2. Tennessee would really like to land another nose tackle or a pure nose tackle. Katron Evans can absolutely play the nose, and I think he can be a dominant force at it, but you can also bump him outside. He's versatile. I think they would like a second guy or someone who is just that pure nose. That is what they do. The guy that fits that bill is Peyton Page. And then you've got 2 more defensive linemen you need to take to keep your numbers replenished. Somewhere in there, they would like to take another linebacker. They'd like to take probably at least 2, if not 3 corners, because you're losing several corners this year. So I think you're going to see Tennessee take at least 2 corners. They wouldn't mind taking an interior offensive lineman or a versatility offensive lineman. They've still got a lot they need to get in this class. If they felt like they could get a really high-end receiver, one of the really elite guys that they've worked with, don't be stunned to see him jump in there. So yeah, Tennessee could be pushing 27, 28, even with 4 departures, pretty easily. It's not hard to see that. I don't know how you make the numbers work there. I don't know how you work that out. I don't know if they know something we don't about this. I don't know if they're doing what you said, just hedging their bets and gambling, but they have a need for several other positions still.
Yeah, and they're definitely not done yet with their top targets, not done with some more, I wouldn't say filler guys, but some more guys who, I think like Miles Campbell, who's not going to be the highest rated guy in the class, but a guy who still fits an obvious need for them. It's going to be interesting to see how the numbers play out, and maybe we'll kind of go more in depth of that in a future podcast, because it's still May. We still have plenty of time for things to work themselves out, but I think maybe in a future podcast to have you guys on as a guest, we might kind of talk about, what do the numbers look like for Tennessee, kind of what we think is going to work out, because you also got to take into account that every year Jeremy Pruitt's been here, Tennessee's taken a couple transfers, and whether it's a grad transfer or a multi-year transfer, they've done that every year that Pruitt has been a head coach too, so that eats into your numbers as well. So that's why I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with this class specifically, what the NCAA does about, are we going to adjust class sizes? Are we going to be more lenient about stuff because kids haven't been able to visit, coaches haven't been able to visit? So I think they should, but it's the NCAA, so we'll see. But I think we're in this podcast. And Brandon, before we go out here, I want you to go ahead and plug some stuff you guys have at VR2, because you guys have some excellent stuff on the site. I know you have a couple interviews and stuff up there as well, obviously breaking down Miles Campbell, who committed to Tennessee. So feel free to plug as much as you want that you guys have over on the Sports Illustrated site of VR2.
Well, as always, anytime we have breaking commitments, you can come over to si.com/college/Tennessee. We're going to have full coverage on these commitments. So when Miles Campbell announced today, we had our breaking news piece, we had an analysis piece, and we have our interview with him. They're all up. You can read all of those, so you can find out the news and find out who has committed to the Vols. You can then turn around and see what they said about coming to Tennessee, and then you can see what Tennessee's landed in them, and that's why we try to break things down that way. But it's more than just the current commitments. We have got a lot of interviews up for 2022 prospects. One of them is Cyrus Moss, number 2 offensive linebacker in the nation in the 2022 class. We've had an interview with him. Come check that out. Tennessee is definitely making waves there, even with the amount of linebackers they're bringing in, and as good as this class has looked, there's definitely interest there. Give us a follow on Twitter @_VR2_. You can find us on Facebook at VR2. You can find me at Brandon_VR2 on Twitter. But again, we do everything we can to stay on top of the current recruiting class, covering the team, and these upcoming recruits. When Tennessee landed Dylan Brooks, we talked about, we're not really surprised by this because of the relationship Tennessee had made ahead of time. These are the guys right now that Tennessee's building that relationship with ahead of time. If Tennessee wants to continue to be closing classes out early and having significant numbers of guys knocked out early, it's going to be through these kind of relationships, and these are the guys they're targeting and making a priority early on. They're names to watch.
Absolutely. You guys are killing it over at VR2. If you want to check out their stuff, like you said, they're all over on social media at VR2. Sports Illustrated is their parent company. They do a great job. Brandon, Matt, all the other guys that they have, that's contributors and stuff for VR2. Check them out. You can check our stuff out at RockyTopInsider.com. A lot of you listen to the podcast via YouTube, so subscribe to the channel if you're listening right now. Turn on notifications so you can see when these come out. As soon as they come out, you can kind of listen to it whenever you get a chance to. Rocky Top Insider on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook as well. Give us a like, give us a follow on all of those platforms. Until next time, signing off for Brandon, I am Nathaniel. This has been another episode of the RTI Recruiting Podcast.